Massive corporate data breaches, of course, cost a lot of money, but ongoing breaches cost even more, and there is a great deal of data that suggests it takes companies weeks, if not months, to respond to data breaches and cyber attacks. For Tech Republic and ZDNet, my name is Dan Patterson, and we're speaking today with Gil Barak. He is the founder and CTO of Secdo, an Israeli cyber defense firm that focuses on incident response. Gil's background comes from Unit 8200, that is Israel's elite cyber defense unit. Gil, thank you very much for joining us today. I wonder if you could first tell us a little bit about how your training in Unit 8200 prepared you to help companies with cyber defense.
First of all, thank you for having me, Dan. Basically, 8200 is Israel's equivalent to the NSA in the US. It's a military unit that trains or selects the top candidates from all the schools. So basically, while in the US, most of the people go to college, in Israel, the army gets to select the top contenders from different high schools, and basically selects them into 8200. Now, 8200 focuses mostly on cybersecurity and intelligence. And I think that throughout the years, as we've seen, cybersecurity has become one of the main, subjects that not only involve enterprises, but also state-grade entities. And so I think that by spending a lot of time there with the top, soldiers who focus on cybersecurity, we kind of all improve each other. So I think that if you compare the skill set of the people there, it's probably 10 times or maybe even 20 times higher than what you see in the standard industry. So it's not a surprise that when people finish serving in the units, they tend to start their own cybersecurity companies. I think that even today in Israel, there should be about 500 cybersecurity companies that have been founded, many of them by ex-intelligence soldiers. And I think that I actually see this in the US, a similar type of event happening with ex-CIA, ex-NSA, basically employees starting their own cybersecurity companies.
So Secdo focuses on incident response. What signals should a company look for in order to monitor cyber attacks and data breaches?
It's a great question. I think that's one of the main issues today. If you look at how enterprises look at security, is they have way too many devices they have to monitor, and way too many employees. Many of the enterprise organizations in the world have tens of thousands of devices, maybe tens of thousands of employees. And if you look at every device that every person has, a phone, multiple phones, a laptop, an endpoint, even network devices, there's so many of them, and each one has hundreds, maybe thousands of ways to break into. So monitoring all of those items is almost impossible. There's millions of ways, literally millions of different ways to breach into a single organization. And that is something that when I finished my service in the Israeli intelligence, I started talking to customers of all sizes, basically banks, telcos, healthcare. It doesn't really matter what the vertical is, but the issue always was the same. They have a lot of data, a lot of devices they have to monitor consistently to look for threats, but the amount of people and resources they have is very, very small. And that's basically what led me to start the company Secdo.
And I'm glad you mentioned the amount of heads and the number of people in firms. As we know, humans can be the strongest or weakest link in a cyber defense policy. How do you encourage or help employees strengthen their cyber defense best practices?
So the approach is very simple or straightforward. I basically decided to look at the way that incident response should be done, top tier level incident response. And we wanted to try to create a system or a platform that not only automates that process, but also augments the capabilities of existing security teams. So whether you're a level 1, level 2, level 3 security analyst, there are always items or technologies that can help you enhance your capabilities and scale the amount of alerts you can respond to. So I think the main, if you look at the industry today, the way security or security operation centers or enterprises tend to work is they tend to buy a lot of products, and those products essentially generate alerts. And I'm not kidding you, there's sometimes tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of alerts generated every single day. These alerts are being sent to those teams that can be anywhere from 2 to 100 employees, but it never scales. It's always 10, 100, 1,000 times more alerts than people. So there is no way around it. We have to automate the processes. We have to augment the capabilities of those security analysts. And as you may know, there is also a big lack of, expertise in the market. We see a lot of education leading to universities and colleges trying to push forward cybersecurity education so that people can actually fill those roles. But in my opinion, no matter how many people you train, there's never going to be a way to scale to the amount of alerts and attacks that actually exist. And by the way, keep growing every single day. And so I think there's no way around it but through automation.
You said the magic word is automation, and coupled with that is the tech skills gap or the cybersecurity skills gap between humans and the need in the market. So what role is artificial intelligence playing in incident response?
I think it's the way to go. It's a key necessity to be able to solve this problem. At the end of the day, when you look at attacks, when you break them down, they have certain behaviors, certain actions. At the end of the day, it's people who are attacking you. And there's people that are defending. So AI, machine learning, assisted learning, all those technologies, all those methodologies are must to be able to achieve what unfortunately will never be perfect. But I think today, if you go 5 years ago and compare 5 years ago to today, the gap has increased dramatically between defenders and attackers. And the only way to close this gap is through AI and automation. And that's what our company focuses heavily on.
What are the costs at the enterprise level? What are the costs associated with a data breach? And not just the breach itself, but as time goes on, what are the costs?
So that's a fantastic question. It's a pretty complicated question to answer, because if I give you the simple answer of you can look at the numbers of how much the breach actually cost to resolve, whether it's the incident response teams and the legal and the PR and all those items, which can mount to tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, as we've seen with public breaches. But there's a hidden cost that is continuous, that is related to the acquisition of solutions and manpower the companies are putting effort into. And that is continuous cost that amounts to, again, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And it all goes back to the same problem. We talked about the fact that it's hard to defend against attackers because of the sheer amount of attacks and alerts that people have to manage. But if you look at it from an economical perspective, it's also the same. The amount of money you have to put into is way larger than the amount of money the attackers have to spend to attack you. And so you really need to focus on a solution that can solve the problem, both from a technological aspect, but also from a financial and economical perspective. And again, that always comes back to automation, AI, and such.
I wonder, at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned the sheer number of cybersecurity firms that have emerged from Israel alone. I wonder if we look at the amount of firms that are providing some sort of incident response or automation, how do I, as a business owner, make a good decision about the right company to choose?
So I think that it's very clear how the market is changing when you look at how different organizations deal with. If you're a very large organization and you have the resources and manpower to hire your own team, that's great, but that is a very rare occasion. There's a big tendency to, as you said, for companies to look for service providers, or what is called MSSPs, Managed Security Service Providers. And I would say that, based on what I've seen at least, there are big MSSPs and there are small MSSPs, and it really depends on what you're looking for. The smaller the MSSP is, they usually tend to be more like any service provider. They tend to be more, I guess, tailored for you as a customer or as an enterprise. They work more closely. They're more aware. They're more selective. The bigger the MSSP, the more generic usually the solution tends to be. So it really depends on who you are and what you're looking for. But from what I've seen, my suggestion would be if you can find an MSSP that at the end of the day, it's people that can work with you and help you and pay attention to you and respond fast, that's probably the best way to go.
Gil Barak is the founder and CTO of Israeli cyber defense firm Secdu. Gil, I wonder if you could leave us with a forecast, a few predictions about the next 12, 18, 36 months. In the past year, we saw the rise of ransomware and DDoS attack on a scale we had not historically seen prior. What should we expect over the next year to 3 years?
It's a good question. I think that we've seen a very big transition between what is called opportunistic attacks, which used to be classic adware, spyware, and now moved to ransomware. But as time goes by, unfortunately, I believe that we're going to see attackers heading into the more targeted, specific, tailored attacks, where the damage is going to be much bigger, much higher. Fortunately, we also see that the industry and enterprises are more aware, and also the governments and regulations are also going to that direction. But I believe that in the next couple of years, we'll see more and more targeted attacks. And I would say that if there's something, if there's a time to start focusing on security, it's now.